Hi, great. Uh, so I'm going to try and keep this short since I think several people are ill. Uh, uh, s- and we don't have all that much to cover. Um, but let me start by just doing a roll call. So, Cam,
Present.
Nina,
Present.
Marty,
Present.
Mish,
Present.
Simone,
Present.
and I'm here. Great. Looks like Janet is joining as well. Janet, can you
Yep. I can hear you.
just we're just taking a roll call.
Up here.
Great. I told him I thought your participation was above and beyond the call of duty.
Thank you.
Okay. Sarah, are you able to
Hi, everyone. Sorry.
no problem. We're just doing a roll call.
I have a gas leak in one of my chimneys, so I'm going to be intermittently here and available, but I've got someone here contending with it. So just sharing that bit here.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay. So just a few orders of business. Someone sent the minutes around. Hopefully people got a chance to take a quick look at them. Any comments, suggestions?
I just want to comment that it looked very nice.
I
It was
did.
well written.
Very easy when you have closed caption to help. Which reminds me of one thing. I'll take the minutes as well today. Before you wrap up with it, just let me know so I can save the closed captions. So it makes much easier to do the minutes after that.
Oh, do you need?
All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right, great. So any modifications of the minutes that people want to suggest? If not, can I get a motion to accept them?
So moved.
Right. And a second?
Second.
Great. So Cam,
Aye.
Nina,
Hi.
Marty,
Aye.
Nish,
Aye.
Mona,
Aye.
Janet,
Hi.
and Sarah.
Aye.
I vote aye. Great. All right, so 8 out of 8. There are a few just want to update about a few things that I have been able to schedule 2 talks, kind of presentations, and just wanted to let you know kind of when they would be. So Dawn has agreed to talk about the school budget on December 4th. She's not talking specifically about the budget this year. She's talking about revenue sources for the school, the nature of state aid, how the budget is put together, those kinds of things. But she'll be here, she'll be participating on the 4th. So we're not going to meet next week because of Thanksgiving. So it'll be the week after that. And then the week after Dawn's discussion, Barry's going to talk about the capital budget committee, capital budget process, and how capital budget process works and is kind of working within the town right now. So he'll do that on the 11th. I have not heard from Michael yet about whether he's going to be able to talk about the last year's budget and how it got put together and give us kind of an overview of that. I'll try and connect with him tomorrow. And then I did want to ask if there are other topics people have started to identify as things that they feel like they could use some additional background on. A few things that have occurred to me over times are the municipal debt and how that's managed, Prop 2.5 and what the restrictions are of Prop 2.5, how the town manages free cash. So there are a bunch of other topics like that we could talk about. We don't have to decide now, but just keep this in mind as you're going through things. Are there particular things that you feel like you've got a hole in your knowledge on, and things that we could help you fill?
Would it, I think would be great to, I know that we discussed a little bit about human resources in general, but there were some follow-up topics. Maybe I have missed if we have received that, but I think it would be nice, at least to me, to have an overview of how we think about this overall structure of the town, and where are the pain points that we should be aware of.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Michael will do that, but if not, we can get someone else to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay. Maybe Marty and I should just talk about where things stand with the regional school committee. So after the meeting, our last meeting, which was 2 weeks ago, I reached out to Mark Healy about having potentially a series of get acquainted meetings, so that they could get to know the Warrant Committee, get to know what our issues are, get more familiar with the town budget, and that we could similarly kind of get more aware of what's coming down the line for the schools. It took a little while for us to connect, but we are going to have a Zoom meeting tomorrow that's just going to be a brief kind of introduction. I am hoping, it wasn't completely clear that they're committing to more than that, but I'm hoping that that'll be the first of a series of meetings that we'd like to expand to include Barry to represent capital budget, and eventually include some of the people from Sherburne. We'll kind of see what the reception is tomorrow, try and get a sense of what they're thinking about how this might work. I've had a couple of conversations with Dawn, and she seems open to starting this kind of communication, and hopefully Mark feels the same way. Any other comments, Marty?
No, I think after many conversations at this meeting, I think everybody's in agreement that this is a better approach than just dropping a letter on them and hoping for the best. And as a byproduct, if this relationship can be fostered, I think that's going to help in the long run with respect to reaching out when there might be some question, and a much more regular dialogue, and in the process avoid these hiccups, if you will, or finding out about things later than we should have. And rather than pointing to some type of rule or regulation, a rigid communication channels, just feel like there's a resource here for them. And particularly when it comes to Barry and the capital project people, I think, at least from the facts as I'm familiar with them, there could have been some benefit from them getting involved as they went down the path of the alternative use of those monies.
Yeah, no, I have not heard from Dan whether or not Sherburne actually sent the letter. I would expect that we would have been copied on it if it had gone, but I was going to email him and just ask what their current plans are, and also kind of reinforce the idea that we'd love to have them participate with us in a series of discussions with the school committee.
Hi guys. Hi Woody. Hi Marty. Just a quick question, because I know I was not at last week's meeting. So did we decide not to co-sign that, just not get involved in that letter that was going out?
We decided not to co-sign, and
Cool.
what we did instead was simply approach them about having better communication and proposed a series of meetings to actually see if we could foster a little bit more kind of open communication with them.
Sure. Okay. And so so what is I'm assuming, well, I think am I the liaison to this committee, or one of them for the regional?
You and Marty are the liaisons to the regional school committee.
Oh, right. So what time is this meeting tomorrow?
This meeting tomorrow is just going to be me and Marty as the chair and vice chair of the warrant committee.
Okay.
But after that, the hope is to include you, and Dawn knows that you and Marty are the liaisons, as
Okay.
does Dawn.
Yeah, and I guess I would mention, Kevin, while you're asking, the next meeting of the Regional School Committee is January 14th. The prior one was on, I'm sorry, there's a meeting on December 3rd is the next Regional School Committee on January 14th. The last meeting was November 5th, which is available on YouTube, which I'd recommend you take a look at to get up to speed.
Okay. So I'm sorry, the next meeting is December 3rd.
The next meeting is December 3rd, yeah. And
Okay.
there should have been, I think if you go on the Regional School Committee website, or the regional school website, they post, I'm looking at a print off of what I took from their website. That's where I'm getting it.
So Kevin, they meet the first Tuesday of every month.
Gotcha.
And then they have a couple of combined meetings with the regional school and the Dover schools and the Sherborne schools. And I believe those happen once a quarter.
And where does it take place?
They're on Zoom.
Oh, I couldn't go in person to somewhere?
You can.
I'm not sure if they're meeting in person. I don't know. If they are meeting in person, it's usually at the middle school library.
Yeah. Yeah, they typically, according to this list, Robin, they meet in the library at the Dover Sherborne Middle School,
Right.
unless otherwise noted.
There you go.
Kevin, I'm happy to facilitate at a virtual introduction to you as I can transition my liaison contact. Diane McCrory, she provides a very comprehensive packet in advance of the meetings. It'll contain all the information you need to log in, as well as the agenda and things, sort of the way that we prepare things with minutes and approvals, ticket items that are coming up. So I'll do that in the next day for you and pass along what I have.
Okay.
And
Thank you very much.
Sarah, do you have to, I know yesterday I went to the Dover school meeting and I didn't realize I had to pick up the packet from Mona ahead of time. So I don't know if that's the same for regional, but I guess Dawn brings the prep packets that all the board members had. So it was a little tricky because I couldn't follow. I didn't have the packet. So just
Yeah, I've never been given a physical packet. I think that might have been abolished during COVID. So if that has started again, that's handy to have, as it is helpful to follow along during the meetings. I don't know that there's ever been a distribution of materials at any of the meetings I did attend in person. So if that's new, that sounds like a good piece of support for you and hopefully for Kevin.
Yeah.
Nisha, maybe you could just talk a little bit about the meeting that you went to and what happened.
Sure. So this was the Dover School Committee, and the part that has to do with the budget, they put their first sheet. Dawn presented the B1, the first version of the FY 26 budget. And the quick notes of that are that it represents just over a 2% increase from last year, as opposed to the previous year, which was almost a 5% increase. And there's some unknowns for our point of view that they won't know for a while. So the biggest drivers, I mean, payroll is almost 90% of their budget, and they have certain contractual increases that are reflected in the budget. There's a savings in some curriculum support, like textbooks and things, because they did a one-time investment last year, and so the cost went down this year. And then they have a big drive, like effort to be building out their special ed in the district, because there's so much money is going to supporting kids that are going to other schools, special ed schools outside of the district, and they can't predict it. So because they can't predict how many kids. So last year, they were surprised by a kid getting and so they have to provide transportation and tuition for that. So the big unknown this year, though, coming up, which is that they'll put out to bid the contract for the transportation. We're in the third year of a 3-year cycle on the transportation contract, and they'll put that to bid in December, and they expect to know by March. But they are anticipating an increase because of fuel. And so they've budgeted a certain increase, but they'll see what happens. And then, yeah, those are the main things. And then they put in a capital request that I know Woody and Cam, you guys are gonna review, but that's about it's 75,000 to replace the carpeting and tile throughout the school.
And Woody, that's on the shared drive for the Warrant Committee.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm sorry, was that the regional school committee or just Chickering?
Chickering.
That's
Oh, okay.
And Mish, one of the other questions that I would have in when they're talking about new transport contracts is considering electrification. It seems to be an ideal application. There are quite a few providers of electric buses out there.
Right.
And in fact, it might actually serve as a financial benefit during the school holidays because those batteries can be used to feed back into the network when there's high demand, for example, for air conditioning and so on. And I think that's something that it at least is worth putting in their ears.
There was a big discussion about electric vehicles. She had anticipated that, and they're working, I guess Needham is taking the lead. I have some notes on this that are immediately in front of me, so I'll do this from memory. But Needham is taking the lead on this. They feel like it's prohibitive in the next 5 years because I guess one vehicle was something like $1 million. Right now, it's just that the industry isn't quite, they didn't feel like it was there yet. And so they are actively working on it. They have whatever is one step short of a mandate, but they have a request from, the town to be, moving towards electric vehicles. They don't believe it can happen in the next contract cycle, but they definitely have done quite a bit of research on it, and they're working with other towns.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
The two things I didn't spend a lot of time on the budget, but the two things that I noticed was that the fact that the increase is only 2% is primarily attributable to out of district expenses going down. I think the in-district expenses are budgeted as going up about 6%.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a 6% increase on in-district. Out of district is going down by 12%. So. And then there's some other savings in other areas, but that's a big change.
And while the capital request for this year is relatively modest at 75,000, next year they're looking at replacing their roof and their HVAC system.
Yeah.
And at least in the write-up, it doesn't mention electrification, although I suspect they are paying some attention to that.
Yeah, and the roof replacement's almost $1 million right now, and the HVAC is a quarter, 240,000.
Yeah.
So those are huge expenses that but they're still working on that.
Yeah, so there'll be a very modest capital request this year, but a pretty substantial capital request next year.
And she said that she anticipated also because there was a big request from the regional schools. So I think maybe the fields, but she said, well, we're not asking for a lot for Chickering because there's a big request for regional.
Yeah.
And I felt like when my kids were there, not that long ago, they did the whole HVAC system. I mean, like within the 6 or 8 years, or I don't know, maybe that's weird.
At Chickering or at the regional?
At Chickering, I don't know. I seem to remember something about that, but maybe it's just not substantial enough.
I don't know. They're a big part of the expense is replacing the roof itself.
Yeah.
But there are some HVAC units that they at least are going to request replacement for.
Yeah, 4.
Yeah. So we'll that's not going to be a problem this year, but it is an issue just as we're kind of thinking going forward.
So
Right.
Kevin, you may be thinking about the air conditioning, which was taken out of the original plan and years later was added back. And I believe that happened maybe 6 or 7, or maybe it's 10 years by now. But when the schools were built to save, the air conditioning was taken out, and with the climate change, it's just been oppressive to teach in the school. So the town did approve putting AC back into the schools. So they retrofitted the system to include AC. So that could be what you're thinking about.
And is that just not working anymore, or because it was pretty cool when I was there?
No, now the AC, they did not have AC originally. The school was very hot.
Right,
So they
right,
retrofitted the system to include AC.
right.
And they actually did mini splits, which in the end was a lot more cost effective.
Yeah.
And from an environmental standpoint, worked really well because they're cooling the classrooms and not all the hallways.
And so what are they asking for? Like, does that not
So
work?
I think it's more the boiler for the heating system,
Oh.
So it's
I
so
believe, but I'm not certain.
it's 2 things. There's 4 HVAC, and then 2 boilers, and they're still doing they're still engaging an engineering firm to review this. So it's not, I don't think they're prepared to say exactly what they need. They have some placeholder values in there.
All right, great. Any other updates from liaisons?
I actually have a very basic question about the liaisons. Like, who was doing the parks and recreations until now?
You mean last year?
Yeah.
I would have to look back and see. Cam, do you remember?
I think it was Steve Migowski, I think.
I think Steve Migowski is
Yes, I think that's right, John.
off the committee
But,
now.
but
So
if you get access to the shared drive, the guidance letter for last year has the full list of liaisons for last year.
Yeah, so we still don't have access to the shared drive. I don't know if, I know it's in the agenda, so I don't know if you want to say, I before I reach out to them, I just want to know if there's like some history that anyone could share with me, so I would get a little bit more prepared for that.
Yeah, I could give you some background on it, so maybe we could talk tomorrow or Friday. But we are working on a variety of things, the emails and the shared drive, and a variety of other things that hopefully will come through soon.
Okay.
Woody,
All
can I ask a question on the operating expenses for the schools that Michelle just went through? Because I think it applies to the regional school district as well. On the out of town placements for
Yep.
students.
Yes.
That drove the favorable variance, I think, for the Dover schools, the major favorable variance, correct?
Right, for anticipated for next year, because she explained they're always a year behind because they get assigned to the out of district schools, but it doesn't reflect in the budget until the following year. And then they can track the kids until they, move on to the regional district or whatever. And so they had an unanticipated person last year. But then someone else is graduating or moving on. So that's how.
The question really was, what is the timing for when that gets settled? Like we're heading towards setting a budget for fiscal
Mhm.
26. Will there be more certainty as we approach that date for approval, or what's the general? They won't know till next year, basically, right? And
Well,
what has been the history of their assumptions and projections?
That's a good question. I mean, they said she did flag that as one of the things that you can't know because it gets assigned, the students get assigned, but that's a good question to know how well they can predict. Yeah.
Yeah.
so just as a little bit of background, they know the students that are in the schools and
Right.
what school they're going to. The variability is around new people moving into the community that may be assigned to an out-of-district school. I think it's also important to understand that out-of-district starts at age 3 and ends at age 22. So all of the costs associated with any student being placed in out-of-district actually reside in the Dover school budget. So to the extent Dover and Sherborne have done a really good job managing some of the programs whereby we have special programs within Chickering and Pine Hill where the kids can go rather than place them out of district. But there are kids with very special needs, like a child with autism. Our school can't really handle that. And at that point, the kids will go to some of these special schools. And again, we're picking up the cost not only of the school, but of the transportation as well. And the variability is really if a family moves into town, it's something that you don't expect to happen. 70% of those out-of-district costs are on, that's the target, have been reimbursed typically through the circuit breaker, which is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts provides that funding. We have had years where if the Commonwealth can't balance their budget, they have reduced the funding amount. So then again, the towns have to make up the difference because this is a federal mandate or state mandate, no child left behind. So that's where the variability comes into place. Many, many years ago, the town made a deal with the school committee, and we said that each year we would 100% fund their budget. That means we're funding 100% of the costs related to the out of district on the condition that those funds at the end of the year come back to us through free cash. Having that arrangement with the schools helps us bridge in the event that we get somebody that we weren't expecting coming into town that needs an out-of-district placement. So that's how it's funded. If we did not fund the budget 100%, but rather funded the net amount, we would have to do a special town meeting to fund that difference.
Yeah.
So
Well-
when you look at free cash, you'll always see $1 million coming back. And you have to keep in mind that that's not over budgeting. It's just we know and we hope that that will come back. Actually, this year we're getting almost nothing back because there were a couple of additional out-of-district placements for the prior fiscal year. So what the schools are going to return to free cash is going to be significantly less. But Dawn can explain all of this much better than I can.
And she can, there's their hope, that's why they're building out the connections program, the SPED program that, and it's housed at Chickering. So Pine Hill kids are coming to Chickering and they're hoping that that will offset. So they're requesting actually 2 new positions in this budget to support this connections program that will hopefully keep kids in district. So it's
It's a lot less expensive.
Exactly.
And it's better for the kids because they're still in the community and they're still with their friends and they're not being shipped out. So, it's a win-win for everybody if we can keep these kids in the district.
So Robin, in addition to the timing of people moving into the town or moving out, I guess, to know how much out of district costs might be, there's also this circuit breaker
That's
variability on
that's what I'm
reimbursement.
talking about. That's the 70% reimbursement.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to, so it's those two major items that are always going to be.
Right, I mean, over the last 10, even more years, the reimbursement rate from the Commonwealth has been really consistent. When I was on the regional schools, there was one year where right at the very end, the Commonwealth cut the reimbursement amount.
And Robin, that's when you say it goes back into free cash, that's what's going back into free cash is the reimbursement from the state through circuit. And what about through IDEA at the federal level? Do we get any reimbursement from the federal Department of Ed for special education needs?
I'm not sure. I do not believe so. I believe it's all state funded, but
Okay.
again, you should ask Dawn. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different formulas because there's also this foundation budget and you
Right,
get a
right.
percentage of that. And I think some of that may be federal funds, but I'm really 15 years ago, I could have told you all about this. I'm a little I'm not I don't remember that well, but I think, I believe Dawn is going to come and present, and maybe Woody, you could talk to her and ask her just before she starts to give an overview of all of these critical items to help understand.
Well, what you've just explained, Robin, is if you look at the schedule that Dawn puts together for the budget, there's a line for the circuit breaker that for this year and next year is blank because of what you just said. It comes in later when they figure out what it is, and therefore there's the full hit for the out-of-district placements in this budget.
Which is part of what we do. Sherborne made the decision because they know they're going to get something back from the state. So Sherborne made the decision. They used to do it the same way we did it, but then they made a decision that they were only going to fund some percentage of the special ed, knowing that they would get money back. So they make a guess of what they're going to get back for circuit breaker, and then they take a percentage of that. But again, you get 2 kids move into the school and you have to have a special meeting because you have to fund that. So it's just a different philosophy.
Yeah. And now that I think about it, it might actually, the circuit breaker might actually be from the federal government. And it might flow to the state first, if I'm not mistaken, but yeah.
You could be right. I don't know. I mean, for us, I know this, the state has in the past not always has changed the percentage in which they reimburse, depending on how, what they're trying to do to balance the budget. And then we also get, there is, because our school system is regionalized, there is a contribution made, and that may be a federal contribution, that offsets the regional transportation. So we also get some of that, and that also can be variable depending on the needs of the Commonwealth. So we do get some reimbursement at the regional level for transportation.
Yeah. And just to be clear, that circuit breaker, the state funds 75% of the tuition. They've committed to that, but what's variable is the transportation, or what?
They could both. I mean,
well, I guess they've committed to this. I don't know, Robert. I mean, Dawn said they committed to 75%. Maybe it could change.
It can change depending on their budget. I think we still have a robust surplus in Massachusetts, so probably pretty certain, but I do know in the past it has changed, and I would go with what Dawn said and not what I'm saying. I'm just going from memory.
Yeah. Sorry, just looking at my notes from yesterday from the circuit breaker.
No, no.
Yeah.
All right, great. So I was going to talk briefly just about some resources, online resources that I think people might take a look at over time as a way of kind of getting a better sense of kind of what Dover is as a town, what its demographics are, and how its demographics and situation relate to some of the surrounding towns. So I'm going to share. I'm just going to do this really quickly, I think. So briefly talk about the demographic profile of the town, talk about the basis of town finances, and show you some tools that allow for comparisons to Sherburne and other surrounding towns. And then talk about the schools and some of the aspects of the schools. And again, allow some of these tools allow us to compare our school system to other local towns. So the last census was obviously 2020. There were some issues with the 2020 census, but for the most part, things are accurate. Dover has a population of around 6,000, around 4,000 adults. Median household income is 250,000. That's the max on the census form. 88% of the people of the adults in Dover have a bachelor's degree or higher. Everyone has healthcare coverage. Median age is 46, which is a little older than some of the surrounding towns. Around 15% of the households speak a language other than English in the home. Almost 20% of the residents are over 65. 3% are 85 and older. The poverty rate in Dover is 1.6%. It's 0 for among children. It's about 4% among those who are over 65. 55% of Dover adults have a graduate or professional degree. 94% home ownership rate. Come back to this, the evaluation in a second. 74% of the school enrolled population is enrolled in Dover, but by that I mean that of the kids between 5 and 18 who would be going to school, typically 75% of them are in the public schools, and about 25% go to private or parochial schools. That's interestingly different in Sherburne and other surrounding towns. It's just a little demographic comparison between Dover and Sherburne. Sherburne is smaller, 4,400 as opposed to 6,000. Total households obviously are different. Sherburne is a slightly lower median income. The bachelor's or higher is slightly lower in Sherburne. Median age is a little lower in Sherburne. Percentage of people who are 65 and older is slightly lower in Sherburne. School enrolled is slightly higher in school enrolled in DS is slightly higher in Sherburne. And this is just an interesting number. 60% of the homes in Dover are valued at $1 million or greater, whereas it's about a third of the homes in Sherburne. So that has an obvious impact on their tax base relative to our tax base. One of the ways in which towns are compared in terms of their finances is something called the equalized valuation or the equalized valuation per capita. So that's total taxable value of all property in the municipality, and per capita is divided by the population. And you can compare among communities as you go through using that. Come back. So the Department of Revenue and something called the Division of Local Resources have amazing data. It is really astonishing what you can look up on the state website in terms of asking questions about the town and how things work. I'll come back to these in a minute. So let me go back here.
Will you be sharing these, Woody?
Yeah, I'll send a lot of this out.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is just the census, the U.S. Census website. It is the world's slowest website, I have to tell you, but astonishing amount of information. This is Dover, for example, by age and gender. So you can see that among the school age population in Dover has many more males than females. These are presumably just demographic variation. So you can do this for both Dover and for Sherburne, and recommended. It's actually astonishing how much information there is. So the Division of Local Services, which is part of the Department of Revenue, has a website that is called Community Comparisons. And what it allows you to do, you can choose any town or all towns in the state, and it allows you to look at a variety of different parameters. One of which here is the equivalent value per capita. So you can see that there's a lot of variation among towns. Most of the towns at EQVs per capita in the 100 to 200 to 300,000 range, dollar range. Dover's here has an EQV per capita of 487, which is quite high. Some of the towns on the Cape, some of the towns in the Berkshires have kind of staggering. Edgartown, for example, has an EQV per capita of over 2 million. But most of the towns that we'd be interested in comparing ourselves to are significantly below the Dover number. So I'll send out that link. As I said, the Division of Local Services has just an amazing website. You can look at a variety of things. There's training, but there's also this data analytics and visualization, which allows you to look at community comparison reports. That's the thing I was just demonstrating. It also has financial indicators, expenditures, property taxes, Prop 2.5 numbers. All those are available to you on the website. And what you can do is, so for example, here, I'm just going to compare. Say Dover. And Sherburne. So it gives you the numbers for those two towns here. So EQV per capita for Dover is 487, for Sherburne is 335 or 336. It also tells you you can get Prop 2.5 data here. The maximum levy limit, the excess levy capacity, the levy ceiling, and the override capacity for the different towns. This lags a little bit. I think these data are from the Prop 2.5 data from 2024, but some of the other stuff is from 2022. But allows you to get a pretty quick snapshot of how these different towns compare.
But Woody, with that EQV, you're saying that once all of the tax dollars that we collect through property taxes, if you divide that by the population, you get that 487 number?
No, it's the value of the property. It's not what's taxed. It's what is taxable, basically.
I
So-
see. Okay.
So EQV reflects the tax base divided by the population.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. So other things just worth looking at. There's something called the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education in the state that also has just an enormous amount of data for school systems. This one, for example, is per pupil expenditures based on kind of year and here's Dover, Sherburne. So per pupil expenditure is 24,988 in Dover. That's for Chickering. 23,349 at the regional school. For comparison, let's see. I'll give you Wellesley is 25,000. Medfield is 18,769. Now, remember that the amount of money that you spend per pupil can fluctuate with a lot of different variables. I'll come back to that in a minute, but for example, the state actually adjusts. Robin alluded to something called the foundation money. So when Massachusetts redid its school funding law a few years ago, what happens is the state sets a foundation level, which is the amount that should be spent per pupil, and then adjusts state aid to the school systems based on whether or not the school system can actually achieve that target. Many towns, such as Dover, frequently way exceed the foundation target. But the target is also adjusted based on complicating factors such as whether the child is considered to be poor, and indicators of poverty would be use of SNAP funds, mass health, AFDC, homelessness. All those things get factored into what the foundation level is for the town. Dover gets almost no state aid, and this is able to fund the school expenses without the state aid, well above the level that the state would mandate, as is true of most of the surrounding towns. I don't want to go too far into this. There's one other thing that I'll show you that is really interesting. So this is another spreadsheet that comes from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It allows you, it's data from 2021. There's nothing since then, but gives you data on school spending and other things, and other information. Based on that. So this is Dover. And what it shows is that 4% of the children in the Dover school system, school system, are considered economically disadvantaged. And that's defined, as I said, by whether or not they're using resources such as Mass Health or FDC or foster care money, whatever. 1.5% of the kids in the Dover school system are ELL children. So when you look at the amount that Dover's spending per child in this, at this time was like $20,000 per child. Factor in the profile of the kids, because if you go and look at a school system like Millis is about 20 minutes away, just past Medfield. So Millis has around 18% economically disadvantaged, still a very small percentage of ELL kids. And they spend significantly less than Dover does per child despite that. So even with the state aid, there are big differences in terms of how the school systems are able to kind of respond to the student population that they get. Just to blow your mind a little bit, this is Boston. So these are all of the different Boston schools. Economically disadvantaged in the Boston public schools ranges from low here of one of the Montessori schools, about 40% up to over 90%. And ELL levels range from 17% at 12% up to 70% in some schools. So obviously the fact that these schools are spending significantly more per child based on state aid primarily reflects the fact that these kids have significant special needs. So one of the things that this has caused me to think about, at least, is how you gauge services, how you measure services and the quality of the services being provided. When your school system is likely to do better in terms of test scores if the kids you get are not handicapped in any way in terms of their learning. So as we think about money being spent on different services in town, it's a challenge figuring out how to gauge whether or not the service is actually achieving what we think it's achieving. That's true for the schools. It's true for a number of things. Marty asked that we include in the guidance letter a request that the department heads speak to metrics that they use around the programs that they're running. One of the challenges, I think, is that many of the metrics that are available are somewhat remote from the actual quality of the service. What metric can you use to tell whether or not your fire department is actually providing a good service? And when the fire department wants an additional engine, you know, how do you know whether or not it's justified based on the metrics that we're using? So just as you kind of go through these numbers and look at these different aspects of things, think a little bit about how we assess the quality of the services that are being provided in different areas in the schools and in DPW and in the library, and how do those metrics, how do those measurements relate to how we fund them? All right, so that's all I was going to say. Questions, comments?
Thanks, Woody. I found that quite interesting. It might have overwhelmed some of the newer people. I don't know.
Well, what I'll do is send out some of the links, and what I would recommend is that you just play with them. It's really remarkable to kind of get a sense of the wide disparities, for example, among towns in terms of what their tax base is, and how that might translate into services. You know, if Edgartown has an EQV of $2 million, you know, which is breathtaking, you know, what how do their services relate to what Dover does at 500,000 or Millis at 250,000?
Well, but that's a little bit of a statistical anomaly, right? There's very few full-time residents in Edgartown versus the property values of the summer homes that are out there, right?
No, that's exactly right. And
Yeah.
and the towns that tend to have the highest EQV per capita are places that are vacation places.
Yeah,
That's still their tax base, though, Kevin. I mean, their tax base is made up of a lot of $10 million to $20 million homes.
right.
So the fact that the home is not occupied most of the year doesn't mean that they can't be taxed at a significant rate.
Right, right. Hey, Woody, a quick Google search said for fire department's effectiveness, common metrics include response times, right? Average time to arrive at a fire scene, number of incidents, total property damage lost from fires, percentage of incidents responded to within a set time frame, citizen satisfaction levels, and the proportion of fires contained to the room of origin.
Yep.
So,
Well, I think that those are all things. I came up with a similar list. The challenge in Dover is that the number of fires that they actually end up responding to may not give you an adequate statistical sample to measure whether or not. I mean, I think we have a lot of faith in the quality of the service that the fire department provides, but it's very difficult to evaluate it.
right. Well, maybe their preventative measures are good. I don't know.
Yeah.
No fires would be the best measure I would have going, right?
Well, one of the elements that has changed over time is the building materials, right? And the fire resistance of houses and construction materials, and what impact has that had on the size of the fire service that you have in a particular location or city or town, if it's residential versus commercial, and the required building codes for sprinklering and
Yeah.
other types of fireproofing has an impact on the size and the type of fire service that you put in place.
NPR mentioned this morning that fire departments need to look ahead because of the forest fire issue. The wild, you know, so a lot of towns are budgeting for new, equipment and measures and training to deal with that. It's a new thing for towns.
Mm.
And given our high level of forestation, that might have real significance for Dover.
Mm.
Well, I was talking to the Board of Fire Engineers, and over the last month or so, they have had many small brush fires that they've had out. And the fact that we have tanker trucks that carry water it's very useful. You know, many towns don't have those. And you typically don't have hydrants in the woods.
It's true.
Yeah.
Right, and we don't have a town's water system really, so
Right, we don't have hydrants, period. So, you know, mutual aid for us is very, very few towns have as many tanker trucks as we have.
Right.
And I know we get called to fires because we have the tanker trucks but you know,
Is there a revenue opportunity there?
I mean, there could be, but we don't have enough trucks.
Yeah.
Seriously, you know, if you talk to that, yeah, again, I'm not an expert, a fire expert. I don't know what the right number of trucks there are that you need. You know, I drive by there and I think to myself, oh my God, how many trucks can a small town like us need? But each truck has a different purpose. And, you know, I would
Specialist
encourage
responsibility.
all of you, if you have time, to actually go meet the chief and have him give you like an overview of what we have and what each of the trucks do. It's really eye-opening.
Hmm.
And it gives you a sense of why we have so many. But you know, again, for us as a town, if we went to a full-time fire department, it would be a lot more expensive. So having the call fire department is really extremely cost effective, but it's hard to know whether or not that's sustainable. So that's a whole other thing that we're going to have to deal with.
all right, great. So that is pretty much all I wanted to go over tonight. We will not meet next week. We'll meet in 2 weeks, and 2 weeks is when Dawn is going to show up and talk. So if you have specific questions that you want to address that you've thought of in advance, I'm happy to have you email me and I'll forward them to her so she knows to kind of concentrate on those things. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And do I have a second? Cam? Thanks. Simone, do I need to do anything to?
No, I just saved the transcript, so we are good now.
All right, so I suspect we can do this by acclamation. Just raise your hand if you agree. Great. All right, so have a good Thanksgiving and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.